Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. This is a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries and exit planning advisors from across the country. Joining me on this segment is Austin Collins. He's the founder of Integrated Wealth Advisors. Austin, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your work and tell us specifically, who are the types of clients that you specialize in working with and helping?
So we run what's called a virtual family office, which if you're familiar with the concept of a family office, it's basically a large group of highly specialized practitioners all working in a very coordinated way to create the best outcomes for whether it's an individual family or in this case, for a small group of clients that I work with. So I've assembled a large group of very talented, very well-established professionals in a range of different capacities. And I coordinate the efforts of those professionals building customized professional teams for each client. And the clients that benefit the most from that approach in my practice are owners of companies with an enterprise value somewhere usually between 3 and 20 million, and who are considering an exit within the next 5 years.
Right on. So business owners are typically great at starting and running businesses and thinking growth, growth, growth. But when it comes time to selling, how many of these business owners do they really know where to start, or how experienced are they in planning their exit?
Well, the answer is not very. In fact, a strikingly high percentage of people, I think it's well over half, but it's almost 3/4 of business owners actually don't even understand what their options are for an exit from their business. And a big part of what we see is that the business owners typically will think about the exit as a single point in time, right? They think about the transaction of the sale, which that's true. That does happen at a point in time. But the process of creating an exit that not only gives them what they want and maximizes value for them, but actually aligns that process with creating the greatest value for the people who take over the business. And so that really, all of those things fit together in a number of different processes. And that's the biggest thing we see is business owners typically will see this as a single point in time until they start to understand more clearly what makes it work well.
Let's unpack it a little bit. Some of the things that they don't know what they don't know about. What are some of the big areas, key areas that you find people think less of or not even consider that is important for them when it comes time to exit?
I think probably near the top of the list is what impact does a change in the structure of the deal or in whether it's the amount of money that they sell the business for, the actual sale price, or the earnout, or some of the different terms around what that looks like. They don't really have a clear way of understanding how that translates to personal impact. So imagine somebody is going through this process of selling their business, and they say, great, they agree on a price of 8 million, and then all of a sudden through the due diligence process it comes out that, well, some things aren't quite the way that they seemed, and now they're only going to get 7.2. It's a relatively common thing that happens. The business owner doesn't typically have a way of converting that to, okay, now as a result of getting 7.2, I'm going to have X amount a month less in income, or I'm going to be able to make X amount less impact on the personal side. And so because they don't have that context, it makes it really hard for them to navigate well, because they're not grounded in any sort of real post-sale reality in advance. And so good exit planning and just good planning in general helps bring a post-sale reality back to the business owner in advance, so that they can use it as a way of navigating the sale process in a way that's truly relevant for them.
Interesting insights. We're coming out of a pandemic as we have this conversation. How has the pandemic impacted any of the businesses that you work with? Any discoveries that you've made along the way, and how it's affected folks in the business community?
Well, it's definitely forced everybody to become much more adaptable, I think is the most common impact that I've seen in terms of impact to people's businesses. I think I've actually worked with a number of clients who have sold their businesses during the pandemic. So it certainly hasn't stopped business sales from happening. I think there are some industries that have slowed considerably more than others. But I've had clients in the medical field, in technology, in architecture, even a client with a car wash. These people have transitioned businesses or in the process of transitioning businesses in terms of ownership throughout the pandemic. So I think it's certainly helped people become much more focused on things that create value. And so that's the number one thing I think I've seen, but it certainly hasn't stopped transactions from happening.
Austin, what inspired you to get into this field and help business owners with their exit plans? How did you get started?
So I've had business ownership is in my family. So I both my father and my stepfather owned architecture firms. And they both had very different ways of operating. And I saw a very different outcome that they both had based on how they navigated. And so for me, it was an opportunity to really understand the impact that being more holistic and having a better overall kind of long-term plan could have, just seeing the different outcomes that they both experienced. So it was great for me to be able to see that. And then as I started working more as an advisor early on, back in the mid 2000s, it became clear to me that it was just something I really enjoyed, helping people empower that particular group of people, because the business owners, in my mind, especially the ones that are kind of on the smaller end, kind of 3 to 20 million, they're creating a huge proportion of the opportunities for other people, whether it's employees, whether it's their families. They're making a huge impact, and they can get way better outcomes than they're getting, and have an even bigger impact. So that was something that I've always been passionate about since I was a kid, but it kind of grew on me as an advisor.
Before I ask you my last question, is there anything that I didn't think to ask you that you feel is important to share with any business owner that's considering exiting their businesses either now or in the near future?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that people should kind of step back and think about is then what, right? So there's an interesting statistic that almost 3/4 of business owners are actually very unhappy within a year of selling their business, which is surprising because a relatively small percentage of businesses even successfully sell. And so the ones that do, you would imagine, at least I imagined, that they would be thrilled. But that's actually not the case. And the stats prove it. And the biggest reason for that is because people aren't thinking in advance. Then what? So after the business sells, right, usually the business is a lot of social interaction. It's a lot of their time is occupied there. Obviously, finances are different. There's people think about the transaction as the business side, but they don't necessarily put as much thought into where's my time going to go, where's my social interaction going to come from, what does this look like, what am I passionate about, what are the things that I can look forward to. And so usually people get to this point where they sell the business, they do a great job, they get it done. And then 3/4 of them end up not really enjoying that to the extent that they could. So I feel like what they can do about that is they can ask that question in advance, and they can do some exercises around maybe structuring what an ideal week looks like for them after they sell their business, but do it in advance. Do it a couple years before you plan to sell your business, right? You've sold the business. Now, where does your time go? Where are you? Who are you spending time with? What kind of impact are you having? Those types of questions, I feel like in advance, are going to give people the most traction and helping them kind of turn this into a process and help them get the most out of it.
Sage advice. Austin, for business owners listening who are considering selling in the near future and need to plan their exit, would like to speak with you, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Yeah, great question. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's always a good place if you're just kind of looking to add people to your network that might be able to help. LinkedIn is a great way to do that. If you want to get in touch with me directly, there's a couple of ways to do that. The first one is you could just go to my website and just send me an email. My website is www.integratedwa, as in integratedwealthadvisors.com. You could also just go to austincollins.org. That's a digital business card that I have set up that's got information about my wealth advisory practice, my business transition practice, but also some other things that I do as well, just to kind of get a sense of kind of who I am and whether or not it might make sense to connect.
This has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Thanks so much, Mark. It was a pleasure.
That was Austin Collins, founder of Integrated Wealth Advisors. This segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.